All right. I think we are live. I hope we're live. Okay. I think we're live. Okay, Gary, if you could check to make sure I'm live on Facebook and then just text me, that would be great. Or just let me know if anything's amiss. All right. Okay. Hey, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome, and thank you for joining me in this session. I'm honored to be here with you in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty, and I look forward to sharing time with you in our shared sacred space together today. So the things we want to do in our sacred space together today is we will set sacred space as we do every week. We'll talk about our topic or talk for the week, and this week the topic will be the zigzag path of bliss and delight. The zigzag path of bliss and delight. And this week we will have an exercise as well. But I'll just say that the exercise for this week will be, if all goes well on the technology side, an extra special treat in keeping with the theme of the topic and the story that we'll tell for this week. So stay tuned for that. And then after the exercise, we will close sacred space. So I'll go ahead and start to open sacred space now. And to do that, I will say that what we would like to do here together in this hour or two that we have is that we would like to make a space together which is devoid of fear, threat, and control. In order for us to open to higher guidance from within our own selves, however we define that. It could be a flash of intuition. It could be a download from our muse. It could be prayers to the gods or God we worship. And so we want to make a safe sanctuary space for all of us mutually to be able to relax and surrender with no feeling of danger or threat, so that we can partake of the emotional nourishment and the spiritual nourishment that comes quite uniquely from being specifically in sacred space together as a group. And in opening sacred space today, I will propose, as I do every week, that we all follow the principles, the 4 principles of Presidian sacred space. Number 1, confidentiality. So standard Vegas rules, what happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. And the way we do anonymization when we're not in person, but we are online here, the stream is public, the replay will be public. So the way we handle confidentiality here is via anonymization. So if you would like to be anonymous as you chat or ask questions or interact, you don't have to be anonymous, but if you would like to be anonymous, you would come into the Crowdcast stream, you would register and then go into edit profile, and then just change your username to Harry Potter, Mickey Mouse, whatever you would like, and then continue, come back, and you can participate anonymously, only if you want, only if you want. The second principle is that we try to maintain a space where there is no threat, no controlling, no fixing, and no tough love. So no healing interventions, no attempts to cure or solve problems on each other's parts. Not because doing that is a bad thing, but because what we're trying to create here is a space which is devoid of fear, threat, and also control. And so control includes forms of control that are even well-meaning, right? Where it's like, you have to take this medicine, you have to read this book, you have to do this program. It'll make you feel better. So there's nothing wrong with that. But because that is based on, pulling the levers of control, it automatically puts you back into profane space. And as we always say, profane isn't bad. Profane is just profane. You have a mix of sacred and profane in your life, just like you have a mix of salty and sweet in your life. And the key is to know what each one tastes like in terms of flavor, and then you can do your own mixing right in your life, because you are the sovereign of your life. So here in Sacred Space, we're looking for an hour or two of just pure sacred space, the physics of sacred space, so that we can do the things that pretty much you can only do in sacred space. So we ask that there is no threat, no controlling, no fixing, no tough love. We are holding space for each other to be however we are, to be afraid, to be anxious, to be happy or relaxed, and to be okay with that and hold space for that. So we accept you as you are, and we hold space for you to be as you are, however you are. The third principle is a corollary to this, which is no commerce. Right? So because we're in sacred space, nothing may be sold. I can't sell you anything. Gowrie can't sell you anything. Please don't sell things to each other in the chat. And that includes things that are sold where I benefit or somebody benefits, it's paid, and it also includes things that you may want to recommend. So even if you recommend something like this book that I'm not related to and I don't make any money if you buy it, or even if you recommend, oh, you should try doing this stretching exercise or whatever, it'll fix that thing right up, right? Even those recommendations, we try as best we can, right, to refrain from them, because even a recommendation is a form of very, very loving and well-meaning, but still threat. Because if I say, oh, you have this ankle pain, well, you should try this exercise to fix the ankle pain. The threat is, if you don't do it, you may continue to suffer your ankle pain, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it's just we're trying to keep the feeling of the sacred as clean as possible so that we can get as much of the octane as possible from our sacred space together, if we can. So what we like to say here is that we are here for your energy, not for the things you bring or recommend. In other words, we're here for what you are, not for what you do or provide, for your essence, not for your value add or your functionality. So no commerce, no recommendations is a part of that. And then the fourth principle is that there is no expectation of participation, right? So there's no pressure to do anything. There's no pressure, there's no fear, threat, or control to whip you into coming to sacred space or staying in sacred space. No expectation of any of that. Again, because the nourishment comes from our held space together and your presence and attention, right? From what you are, not from what you do or provide. So you can chat or not chat. You can share with your friends or not share with your friends. You can stay and go as you please. And all of that is okay. We hold a space here for you as a shelter to use as you like or as you don't feel like. And that's okay. So those are the four principles of sacred space. And all of us here together will tend to amplify that effect. So it becomes this like huge, potluck feast of sacred space that we all can nourish ourselves on together. Okay. So this is what I propose. And if you are not okay with that, just want to give you kind of the heads up that we are about to move now into sacred space together. So if you would not like to move forward into sacred space, that's totally okay. There's no fear, threat, or control for you to stay. But we will pause right now and just give you a moment to make your selection and withdraw from the group if you would like. And it's totally okay. We'll still catch up with you later in profane space and hang out. Those of you who are on my email list, you know I'm still going to send you emails. So no worries at all. So I'll just give you a moment and pause here for you to make your selection. Okay. And now, so for the rest of us here, we will now move forward together into sacred space. And as we now cross the threshold together into sacred space, I will just remind us all that we would like as much as possible to follow the four principles of confidentiality/anonymization, no fear, threat, or control, no tough love, no interventions, no commerce, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. All right, welcome to Sacred Space, everyone. Now in this, what is basically the year anniversary of our Sacred Space. I think the first one we did was March 25th of last year, and now it's the first one of the new year, Sacred Space, March 28th. So welcome. We made it. We made it, and the path was definitely a zigzaggy path. The path was definitely a zigzaggy path. Which I guess then brings me to our topic for this week, which is the zigzag path of bliss and delight. The zigzag path of bliss and delight. So in our weekly brainstorm session that I have every week with Gauri, my editor in Bangalore, India, we came to a reflection on the intrinsically zigzag nature of the path of life when you consistently follow the golden thread of your delight and bliss. Right? So this phenomenon where when you are following your delight and bliss and you are living your purpose and all of that, right? When you do that, and when you do it well, your life will but it will intrinsically be this zigzag path. Okay, what does that look like? How does that pattern happen? How does it arise? How does it feel? And to dive into that, we will do another story from the Greek tradition, and Gauri will tell us about the story she's chosen. And then, so Gauri, come on up if you can. And then for the exercise afterwards, we will have a special treat that I will explain more when we get there. You still have to listen to me blather on before we get to the actual exercise. And that's not a threat. That's just a warning. Hi, Gauri.
Hi, Artie. Hi, everyone.
How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So would you like to tell us about the story or the mythic figure you've chosen for this week?
Yeah. It's amazing that, this year in 2021, we've kind of come back up. I think we started the whole mythic series with stories from the Greek tradition. And then we went on to folk tales from all over the world for a bit. And in 2021, we're back to the Greek tradition. It's somehow the golden thread seems to kind of pull us along the Greek tradition every week. So, so you kind of see all the, famous characters from the Greek mythic pantheon coming up for us. And when we talk about one character and then we think, oh, why not this and why not that? So now at Orpheus, and I also see a kind of pattern with Orpheus, the son of Apollo, the god of music, right? And I see a pattern here that we've been covering all these children of Apollo. And it's, I don't know why. I don't know why. We've just been kind of picking people, and I then start noticing they are all.
That's a good point. Yeah. Asclepius is the son of Apollo.
Yeah.
Chiron was raised by Apollo.
Yeah.
Huh.
So we're now with Orpheus, and it's kind of going on that way.
I love that. I love that. Will you tell us about Orpheus?
Yeah. So Orpheus was more than the fact that he was the son of Apollo, which is where his gift comes from, is more well known in literature and folklore, and anyone who's familiar with the Greek tradition. Orpheus is more well known for his love for Eurydice, and somewhat always regarded as a tragic story of love. And that's what we're going to read through today when we talk about Orpheus and Eurydice. Right. So Orpheus was the son of Apollo, and of the many things that Apollo is the patron god of, music is one of them. right? So when Orpheus was born to the muse Calliope, Calliope is one of the 9 muses, and she was the muse of epic poetry and eloquence. So Apollo's the father, Calliope is the mother, right? So when Orpheus was born, it kind of seemed natural that Apollo must gift him with a lyre, this traditional musical instrument, and he taught him how to play. And Orpheus, growing up, played this instrument and sang to it, and he became so good at it. He played to such perfection that when he played his music, he could charm anyone and anything in this world. So just a few examples of how the charm of his music worked is that in the past we've done the story of Odysseus on his adventures and how he comes across these sirens, and it is said that no mortal can actually listen to the sirens' music and come out of it alive. And so he had to resort to trickery to kind of escape from the ill effects of the sirens singing. And yet before that, when Jason went on his quest for the golden fleece, in the Argo, Orpheus was one of the heroes with him. And they had to go past the sirens. And the way they did it was that Orpheus pulled out his lyre and played his music. And when he played his music could drown out the song of the sirens. And therefore no one was affected. So that was the power of his music, right? And while growing up, as he played, trees and rocks, even those responded to his music. Trees moved and rocks softened when they heard his music. So that's the charm it had. So Orpheus grew up, and one day he saw Eurydice walking about with her friends, and he fell in love with her. And he wanted to marry her. And it so came about that the god of marriage, Hymen, was called to bless the couple when they got married. And yet this god of marriage did not bring very happy omens with him. And I'm not sure he even blessed the couple because he had bad news. He, in as many words, told Orpheus that this is not going to last, and I have no blessing for you, because this is an unfortunate match. And despite those warnings, Orpheus stuck with his decision of marrying Eurydice because that's the only thing he wanted. And so they were married. But shortly after that, one day when Eurydice was walking in the garden, she was seen by this shepherd called Aristeus, who was struck with her beauty, and he made advances to her. And Eurydice, to escape from him, she fled. And while running, she stepped on a snake in the grass. She was bitten in the foot and died. So that is how the almost like a prophecy that Hymen made came true. And that was really a tragic end to Orpheus's marriage and Eurydice's life. And Orpheus was drowned in grief, and he did what he knew, the only thing he knew, which was to sing. He poured out all his grief. He poured out his grief to both gods and men. And he found that nothing, this time his music couldn't really do anything about what had happened. So he finally decided that he would seek his wife in the realm of the dead. So he descended into the underworld, and typically the souls, the dead souls that would journey to Hades, to the underworld, would have to cross the river Styx, and they would be ferried by this boat, which was ferried by Charon. They would cross the river, and at the gates there would be this three-headed dog, Cerberus, this fierce dog who guarded the gates and made sure only those who belonged to the realm of the dead entered. So then they would cross the gates and go into Hades. And Orpheus decided that he would want to enter the realm of the dead with his mortal body, right? Which no one had ever done before. And he took his lyre with him. So he walked through and played his music everywhere. And this is the kind of music that charms everything in the living world. And turned out it charmed everyone and everything, even in the realm of the dead. So Charon let him through, right, cross the river Styx. The three-headed dog, Cerberus, was completely softened and charmed into letting him into the gate. And he kept moving in, all the way into the realm of Hades, until he reached the throne of Hades. He faced the god of the underworld himself. And he stood there. And, where Hades and Persephone was sitting on the throne. And he sang to Hades. He told him that I've come all the way here, and this is not my challenge to you. I've not come here to test my strength against the three-headed dog. I've not come here to challenge you and argue with you and question you about what you've done. Or this is not to tell you that it's wrong for my wife to die. I mean, I'm no one to argue with you, right? I know that every living person must die and pass through the realm of the dead. I understand that. All I have come to do is plead to you, because my only argument, the only statement that I have to make is that I was struck by love. And if you know anything about the living world, you know that the God of love is very powerful, and everyone honors the God of love. And I'm guessing that it's no different in the realm of the underworld as well, because from what I've heard, you were struck by the God of love as well. And he's referring to Hades falling in love with Persephone and literally snatching her from the living world to take her back to the underworld and make her his queen, right? So he refers to that and says, well, you should know all about this, and I'm sure you can sympathize with me when I say how much I was in love with my wife. And this is all I've come to ask. Can you send her back to me, because she was taken away too soon? And that is the only thing I have to say, that let her live her life with me. And then, of course, you can take her back when it's time. And if you refuse, and I completely anticipate you refusing this request, and if you refuse, that's okay. I'm simply not going back. And then instead of one soul, you could have two souls. So I think that works out for you as well. So I'm okay either way. But this is what I've come to say. I mean, that was the depth of his grief, that he offered himself to Hades if Hades couldn't accept his appeal. When he sang all of this, I mean, Hades was moved. And how could he not? Everything moved when Orpheus played his music, right? Persephone, when he mentioned how Hades also was struck with love, Persephone started to cry. And Hades was deeply moved. And he had absolutely no objection, nothing at all, to make when Orpheus asked him that he wanted his wife back. So he summoned Eurydice from all the newly arrived ghosts. And he said this to Orpheus: you can take your wife back, but there is one condition. if you want her back in the living realm, is that you walk back to the edge of the underworld, cross the veil, you go back to the living world. You are not to look back even once, because Eurydice will be following you and she will come back into the living realm. Just don't look back. And Orpheus was overjoyed, overwhelmed, was so happy. He thanked Hades, turned around and started walking back, all the way back, to the point where he reaches, the veil, where he crosses over. And at that one moment, he just wanted to make sure that Eurydice is still following him. And he turns around. And that's it. That is almost the point when Eurydice is crossing the veil. And she pales into a shadow. And she disappears forever. She says farewell to him, one last farewell, but he can't even hear her because he's already crossed over to the other side. And she disappears. Now, he's so completely lost in grief. He wants to try to retrieve her one more time. But, the underworld has already made concessions for him once. Has already allowed him to break all rules once, and they can't allow that again. So this time when he goes back, Charon does not let him cross the river. There is no letting him do this all over again. So he realizes this is futile. He just lies there on the bank of Styx crying for 3 days, realizes how futile this is, and then goes back up into the living realm, crying out, singing in grief, wandering around, playing his music. For 3 years, this goes on. And during those 3 years, there are women who are so moved by Orpheus's music that they try to engage his interest, they try to attract his attention. And he's not interested in anyone, so he spurns all of them. All he does, sit on a rock, sit on a little hill somewhere, and just keep playing his grief out in the form of music. And finally, one day, when he was playing his music, he's seen by a group of Maenads. And Maenads are these women who are the followers of Dionysus. And, they perform rituals and rites, in honor of Dionysus. And we've covered in Dionysus before that, he's the god of religious ecstasy. He's the god of wine and drinking and merrymaking, and frenzy and madness, even as they called it. So there are these priestesses. So Maenads are worshippers of Dionysus. So they're dancing, they're intoxicated, and at this point, they spot Orpheus sitting there and playing his music, and they're not moved by his music at all. They are in their own frenzy. And they say, look at this man, he who spurned our advances. And in the complete madness, raving, they started to throw stones at him. They pulled him down, tore him limb from limb, and, tore him into pieces. And Orpheus died at that spot. The Muses, his mother Calliope and her sisters, so all the Muses came up, picked up piece by piece all his body parts, and then buried him at a place called Libethra. And it is believed to this day that the place where Orpheus is buried, the nightingale sings sweeter than any other place in the world. So that's how Orpheus this time got to go back into the underworld, this time, rightfully, because he is now dead. And as soon as he reached the underworld, he sought out Eurydice. and embraced her. And this time he had no fear that a wrong look will make him lose her forever. This time he could look at her as much as he wanted because he was united with her forever. So that's the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. Artie, would you like to come back on? Okay, I can hear you.
Hi. Thank you for that story. It was so beautiful.
Thank you.
So I'll start with my usual question, which is, so having told that story a second time, where do you enter into that story?
I think while we were discussing, while reading the story, I mentioned to you that this, for a while, seemed very, very familiar. And, I wasn't very sure as to, it all seemed like I've heard all of this before. And I know this from some other story, but I just wasn't sure where or how. And then I realized, okay, I was reminded of, I think, the first story that I ever told in Life Sacred Space, and that was of Savitri, right? That's from the Indian tradition. And it has a very similar theme where Savitri marries Satyavan, despite knowing that his life is about to end. He doesn't have very many days to live. And she's told by everyone not to marry him, and she insists that that's the man she wants to marry. Just like the prediction, he dies exactly a year after getting married. And then she pursues and follows the god of death. And, places such well-structured arguments in front of him that, he's so impressed that he restores her husband's kingdom. He restores his father's vision, the blinded king. He restores his vision. Then, ultimately, reluctantly, but he feels compelled to restore his life as well, right? And then they go back. So now they have the kingdom, they have vision and everything. So it seemed like, to me, when it finally struck that, okay, so this is where I see the pattern and the familiarity. I realized the Savitri story is almost like a mirror image of Orpheus' story. So in that story, they're able to go back to the living realm and everything ends happily. In terms of, living people. If we get to live, we think that's a happy ending, right? So everything looks fine and great. And then there's Orpheus' story, which is like exact mirror image where the union happens in the underworld. Right. So that the pattern really intrigued me. And I thought, there's something here. There's something.
Well, it makes sense. The inner masculine always follows the inner feminine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's great. The second thing that really struck me about the story was, the power of Orpheus' music. And I've always been fascinated by, in the Odyssey, how the sirens appear. And next to which Odysseus has to go to kind of overcome the power of their magic, right, when they sing. So that's always, for some reason, fascinated me. And then I think about this. None of that really affected Orpheus at all. The sirens had no power over him. So that is some really potent music. You can play music that way. So yeah, so that was what struck me in the story.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So I want to go through some of the notes we came up with together as well. But But in doing that, I should say, because we've been at this for a year now, so people, I'm sure, are like coming in, this, for many people, this may be their first live sacred space session.
Yeah.
I'll just give my usual quick thumbnail of how it is we read dreams and myths in the way that we practice healing in support of people going through their cycles of healing and bliss over the course of their lives. So when we read myth and fairy tale and dream, we read them symbolically, not allegorically. So we don't read these things for like the lesson and the moral of the story is, you should beware of, women who have been drinking a lot or you'll get killed, right? In the mythopoetic sense, when we read something as a symbol, not an allegory, we read the entire story as a reflection of your inner world. In other words, the way you read a dream in our style is that you regard every major actor in the story as a different part of your own inner self. So in this story, Orpheus is a part of you. Eurydice is a part of you. Hades is a part of you. His lyre is a part of you, et cetera, et cetera. And these are all different aspects of your own inner self. So you may say, it's like saying, well, there's only one me, but I do have a liver, I do have a heart, I do have eyes, I do have lungs. And sometimes they may not be working in harmony, right? And what happens when certain scenarios arise? So every myth and fairy tale is like a mini case study of what happens when certain scenarios arise. And the way you read this is, you start at the beginning, you see all the players, Orpheus, Eurydice, Hades. You hit the play button, you let the video, the story unwind, and then you look for who's doing what to whom, what are the interactions, and then you gain insight from that. Not necessarily allegorical warnings, right? A warning would come from a more profane space. But when you read it symbolically, you're like, oh, the nature of this is this and this. That's not a threat, that's not good or bad, it just is. Right? And when you read something symbolically, that's how you typically take insight. So in this case, we have the divine Orpheus, who is the son of both Apollo and Calliope, who is the muse of epic poetry and eloquence. Right? So immediately, he's the son of Apollo, so the god of healing, the god of music, archery, and his mother is a muse, right? So it doesn't get any more explicit than that. He's going to be on the side of the muses. His mother is one of the 9 muses, and with a pedigree like that, it makes sense that he is then the god of musicians, right? Musicians, worshippers, and craftspeople, artisans of the muse, musicians. And so the basic expectation we have when we talk about following your bliss, following your delight, is that we talk about being led and guided by our muse, right? And it's no mistake, it's no accident that we use the same word as the Greek use for this sort of level of divine inspiration. And his strongest connection with the muses is through his own mother, who is the muse of epic poetry and eloquence. In other words, the muse of the inspired powers of oration and sweet speech, right? Compelling speech, inspiring speech. So he's already a son of Apollo and Calliope. And so his superpower is eloquent music itself. And music now, in our past sessions, we have connected and identified with the idea of delight, right? The thing you do, the thing you love to do for no good reason. It's just delightful. I can't even say why. I mean, I could break it down and give you a laundry list of features why I like this certain thing or this state of affairs. But that almost degrades the experience, right? There are no words to really describe something that truly delights you at your core, right? It just delights you for no good reason. And in 2 previous sessions, we read the symbol of music as delight. I think it was, I think Gary can find the links and post them. The role of delight in healing and the importance of following your delight one after another. So delight is the thing you do when you do it for no good reason, not out of need or want, but delight is the thing you follow out of desire. And of these three levels of will, need, again, are the things you do because you have to. If I don't eat food, if I don't protect myself, I will die. Want are the things you do that are typically to mitigate or minister to a wound of yours, right? So I grew up, let's say I grew up very poor, and I swore to myself I would never be poor again. So now I'm all about the money, right? All I care about is the money. So those are the things you do, not out of need, because there's a certain level of money beyond which you don't really need to make more money to survive, but you keep going anyway. And in that example, it's to sort of cover up this wound from childhood. And that's fine, right? Well, 80% of most of what we do as human beings is out of less need and more want. The things we do to soothe our wounds from early childhood. So there's need, want, and then the third level is desire. And the way we think about desire is that desire is the level of thing where you do for no good reason. And when, your parents say you're doing that for no good reason, there's no point in you like playing that music. How are you going to make money doing that? Or painting that artwork, right? Stop daydreaming, stop wasting time, and do things that matter. And when, in the profane, people say, do something that matters. Don't do anything for no good reason. The things that matter and the things that are reasonable are typically in the realm of need and want. Because the profane world is the world of fear, threat, and control, and need and want is all about fear, threat, and control. Desire is the realm devoid of fear, threat, and control. In other words, the things you do that you are drawn to do, that you must do as opposed to should do, that you will do regardless, for no good reason. You don't even know why. Okay. So delight is when you follow your bliss. So the pattern of Orpheus's path here is when you look at his parents and his own superpower of eloquent music that can charm anything, that can charm gods, that can charm animals, that can charm humans, that can charm trees and stones. This is the hero, right? Beyond anyone else. This is the hero you expect to actually follow the golden thread of his delight, right? To follow literally music of the muse, his own mother, right? Into his life path of bliss. Said another way, I mean, if even Orpheus doesn't follow his path of bliss and path of delight, if even Orpheus goes off and says, well, forget music, I'm just going to be a lawyer or a banker. I mean, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Ideally, if you're a lawyer or banker, it is your delight and bliss. You're not doing it just for the money, right? But of all of us, right, humans, gods, whatever, if there is only one figure whom we expect to follow his delight, it is Orpheus. Right? I mean, if he doesn't follow it, then the rest of us are definitely, forget it, we just have no chance. So then, it also follows that whatever path Orpheus follows, you can take that as a symbol of the path of bliss. Okay. So there's a little bit of calculus algebra going on here in terms of deducing how we take insight from the archetypal pattern and narrative arc of the Orpheus myth. And so the way I'm taking it here is, if anyone's going to follow his bliss, it's going to be Orpheus, the god of music and the son of the muse of eloquence herself. So whatever he does in his story, that's what's going to happen when you follow your bliss. Okay. So we don't take it as an allegory. So when the Maenads come after you, you better run. Right? It's not allegorical, but rather symbolic, which is to say, whatever this guy does, whatever this guy goes through, this is the pattern of bliss. Right or wrong, good or bad, you like it, you don't like it, this is the pattern of bliss. And you can say no, but this is the pattern. So then in looking at the pattern of Orpheus, what can we learn about the pattern of bliss? The first thing is he plays music, first of all, for no good reason. Right? He plays music because he just loves to. Everywhere he goes, he's playing music. When he's happy, he's playing music. When he's sad, he's playing music. When he's in the land of the living, he's playing music. When he's down in the underworld, he's playing music. His music does also charm everything and everyone around him. And that's fine. But that's more of a side effect. It's not why he does it. Right? I mean, who plays music in order to charm trees and rocks, right? I mean, there's no point to charming trees and rocks. They're just there. And trees are intrinsically given. You can like walk up to a tree and take the apples. You don't need to convince them, right? So his power of charming also is not his intention. It just happens, right? You play because that's what you do. That's what flows out of you. And he is the kind of quintessential archetypal pattern of that. Then he chooses his wife, Eurydice, right? Whose name, the name Eurydice actually means wide justice, right? So broad justice for everyone, justice all around. Justice, fairness, balance, right? So justice is not the allegorical, I'm going to punish you for your, letting your meter run out and I'm going to give you a parking ticket. Justice is more a sense of balance, right? So he pairs with the inner feminine visionary power of balance all around, Eurydice. And he is told, oh, this is a bad match. This is a bad match, right? And you could almost say, because when you follow your bliss, it perhaps ends up being balanced because you're like, eventually the storming waters, flood waters like settle down into a river groove and then just flow as a quiet river eventually, right? But that's not the natural, it's not necessarily the natural way it flows. When you follow your bliss, often you're breaking the banks, you're busting through dams. You're like, sort of tearing off sort of masks and chains of profane society in order to free the lane for your bliss to flow. So it's often quite disruptive when you start to follow your bliss. So anyway, he chooses this wife, which is all about balance and calm. And he's told in no uncertain terms, dude, this is a bad match. Like, I'm here to officiate at your wedding. I can't even bless you because the omens are so bad. And he chooses her anyway for, wait for it, no good reason. No good reason. He doesn't say, oh, this is a good alliance for our families together. We'll have good-looking kids. We'll make a lot of money. We'll have a lot of prestige. There's no calculation. He loves her for no good reason, and he follows through for no good reason. Come what may. Come what may. So this inner masculine figure of Orpheus cleaves to the inner feminine, Eurydice, in the face of all good reason, right? Need and want. And when good reason rears its head and takes her away from him, right? It's the snake that bites her on the foot. So the feminine divine basically takes Eurydice down below. In a manner and place of her choosing, the snake sort of inner feminine divine force, and it has no regard for whether you feel like it's timely or not. When it's time, she takes her and takes her into the underworld. So the visionary inner feminine undergoes transformation and goes down into the underworld. This is exactly the same image of the caterpillar going down into the cocoon and then coming back up later in a different form, or trying to come up in a different form. Asclepius went down and up. Jesus went down and up. The caterpillar went down and up as the butterfly. The new moon goes dark for 3 days every month and then comes back up. Okay. So it is a loss, obviously, but it's also a transformation. Because Eurydice is still there. She's just in the underworld. In grief, plunges him into grief, and everyone undergoes transformation. He then, um, because of his superpower of delight, Orpheus, and Orpheus alone, because it's never been done before, is able to go down as he's singing his song on his lyre, right? As he does, because he does this all the time anyway. When he walks around, it just pours off him. Certain people, when they walk into a room, when you're in their presence, you just feel this certain power just pouring off them, right? And you get this the strange suspicion that it's not coming from them, it's coming through them. That they're a portal, they're a channel, they're a kind of fountain, right? And often it's comforting to be around people like this, because then you don't need to think as much about the fact that you are actually a fountain and portal as well. Right? It's especially delightful when, like, certain advisees, when we do our weekly private sort of healing groups, when they come into contact with very, very powerful figures from within, they come into contact with basically different forms of their inner muse. And I'm reading through their updates. And then I typically, I comment as we go, right? So I'm not reading the whole thing and then making my comments. So I'll say something and I'll be like, yeah, I think it's like this, and this. And then right after, they'll do the interview of, like, their inner muse, and the muse will say exactly what I said. And I'm like, well, there you go. You don't need me anymore. You don't need me anymore. You're getting it straight from within, right? What do you need this outside sort of person to sort of nag you for anymore? And it's just so it's so delightful, when that happens. So anyway, Orpheus, because of his superpower of delight, is able to go down and convince the very god of the underworld himself to release and reverse. Right? This is just like Asclepius. Right? It doesn't matter the mechanism. Asclepius basically raised them back up through the blood of the Medusa gifted to him by Athena. So he had the power of reversing. And then Orpheus has this power of reversing as well. The mechanism is different, but the motif is the same. Okay. And there is, honestly, when an Asclepian healer is doing their kind of craft, there is a lyrical nature to the healing. It's not just technical, let's just sew you up and then do the next thing, right? So there is this musical, lyrical kind of channeling quality of healing. And then certainly in certain forms of music, which, if we're lucky, we will experience later in the session. Certain kinds of music, when they hit that certain place in you, a certain chord within you, has a profoundly powerful healing quality as well. And again, not technically controlled and predicted and manipulated like a cure, like a pill you would take, but a certain kind of music played at a certain kind of time, serendipitously, for you to hear when you're in a certain kind of mood and state of openness or not. Right? It's all of those combinations that need to align for this kind of magical power of healing to happen. So, just like Asclepius, Orpheus plays this role of a kind of midwife to the completion of the transformation of the inner feminine back up to the living world. Right? He has convinced the god of the dead, the god of the underworld himself, and his argument. Right, and these details are all consistent when you dive down into them. He has the superpower of charming, but when he is actually before the throne of Hades, his argument is completely devoid of fear, threat, and control, because this is a god who is, like, deeply soaked, marinating every day in his bliss. So he is in the sacred every day. He doesn't threaten anyone. He doesn't threaten himself, and he has no threat. There is no bargaining or exchange, which is another kind of threat, right? I'll give you this only if you give me that, and there's a kind of implied threat there. That's why commerce is a kind of profane activity, because of the nature of threat, right? But when his argument comes out, it is not with threat, it is not with exchange, it is simply for no good reason. He says, I'm here basically for no good reason. And I'd like her back for no good reason. I love her for no good reason. And if you say no, there's no threat. If you say no for no good reason, I'll stay here, if it's okay with you, because I would like to be with her, even if it means I cut my own life short. Right? So he obviously said it much more eloquently than I just did, but it is this basic argument on the basis of delight and desire that actually wins Hades for no good reason. Right? You can't threaten or bargain with Hades. Right? You can't bargain around emotional wounds and say, well, I'll do this if you give me that, because when you die, all these wounds resolve anyway. The only argument that holds on all three realms, right, but especially in the realm of the underworld in this case, is the argument at the level of delight. Not need, not want, but desire and delight. I'd like my wife back for no good reason. And I'm fine with anything. It's just I'm wandering around in grief. I may as well wander down here. Even standing before your throne, I get to be closer to her than I otherwise would be. And that's why I'm here. And it is the force of the feeling of this delight and desire. Because you could say it's loyalty, but it's not that, right? It's just pure desire for no good reason. No wife who died an untimely death would fault her husband for not trying to revive her. It's like, I'm dead. I'm in the underworld. So what's it's okay if you don't come and get me, because it would be futile anyway, right? But he gets this chance to bring her up. And then when he goes back up, it is this very same delight that leads him to just look back because he loves her so much. And it is because of that same delight, that action taken for no good reason, right, that causes him to lose her again. Right? So all throughout, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that he is consistently following his delight and allowing himself to act from delight for no good reason, not out of fear, threat, or control. Right? And this is the thing that makes his path so zigzaggy. Right? He marries, quote unquote, the wrong girl. Right? He loses her in an untimely manner. He wanders down into Hades, not trying to convince Hades, but convinces him anyway. Gets to bring her back up, and then can't help himself or forgets himself in a state of musicality and delight. Looks back anyway and loses her again. Right? It's a total zigzaggy path, but the one consistent thing is that he's following his impulse of bliss and delight. Okay. So when you follow this, and Orpheus is the archetypal version. He's not some like guy on the street where you're watching him and going like, "Oh, dude, what are you doing? Let's not do it like that. Right? Don't be like him." This is Orpheus. So he is literally the son of the muse and Apollo. Right? He charms everything, and he lives out of delight. And so when you do that, this is zigzaggy path up and down, gain and loss will happen, and he's okay with that. He's okay with that. Right? It's delight following your bliss that leads you to union with the inner feminine in the first place. Delight gives you the power to bring her back, and delight messes you up and causes you to lose her again. This is the pattern, the zigzag pattern. It's not right or wrong. It is what happens when you follow your bliss. I mean, folks who have taken the Bliss program with me, you ask any of them, are you on your bliss path now? Yes. Are you living a life of delight? Yeah. Has your path been zigzaggy and up and down? Yeah. And that it just is what it is. Okay. Later, when the Maenads, right, these women or nymphs who are associated with Dionysus, attack him, right, you have to remember that it's not a question of them just being drunk, right? Alcohol is a symbol of a substance, of a catalyst that raises you, when used properly and ritualistically, into a religious ecstasy, right? And so being torn limb from limb by the inner feminine in manifold, right, is a ritualistic symbol of transformation. When you die, it's a symbol of transformation, as we always say. Transformation by the inner feminine, not visionary level, but even beyond the visionary level, which is the ecstatic level. Okay. So I think it was Plato who made a comment on the story and said, well, his punishment was that he was killed by a bunch of women, right? So this Plato, very kind of sexist remark, where it's like somehow, a shameful thing for a strong man to be killed by a bunch of women. And that's just not the point of the symbol at all, right? These maenads are the same feminine figures who tore even Dionysus limb from limb, right? The god they serve and worship, and killed him, right? And then he rebirthed from there as well. He rebirthed as the grapevines, right? So it is the symbol of the inner feminine in manifold, in a state of beyond visionary to the level of ecstasy, which transcends good or bad, who then rip you and transform you and send you down into the underworld. This kind of death/transformation is a special kind of transformation where the inner feminine, right, comes at you at full force. It seems like vengeance, and it is terrifying, but it comes at you in full force as a state of ecstasy. Said another way, this is a rare form, a high rarefied form of transformation. It is an honor, right? It is an honor, and this is exactly what Plato missed. It is an intense form of transformation, and in some versions of the myth, it is Dionysus who explicitly ordered the maenads to go do this. Now, some traditions actually equate Dionysus with Hades. It's a bit of a nuanced connection. It's too much to go into here. When we do, if we do the myth of Demeter and Persephone, we may touch on that, although it's a little bit involved. But here, anyway, is another zigzag, right, in the pattern of Orpheus, where his delight, continuing to play music, caused him to fail to escape the maenads. And Hades/Dionysus rip him apart, transform him. And then the muses finished the job and sent him back down into the underworld. Okay. So the maenads here are an aspect of the inner feminine. Eurydice is another aspect of the inner feminine. Calliope and the muses are another aspect of the inner feminine. So there is only one inner feminine, and she shows up in many different faces. Okay. So this is the same inner feminine, nurturing, nourishing, and visionary, ecstatic, right? Ecstatic force within you. And all of these then conspire to send Orpheus back into the underworld. An interesting detail is that Orpheus's music can drown out the music of the sirens, is the music of the muses, basically, through his mother, okay? And yet are not able to drown out the maenads. But the maenads are impervious to his music. So it's like sirens, muses, maenads. Why are the maenads impervious to his music? The implication here is that the maenads symbolize this level of ecstasy, religious, spiritual ecstasy. And that is the one thing that transcends even one's bliss. When I talk about the 4 yogic paths to the sacred, I think it was about a year ago we did that talk. We talked about karma yoga, right, as one of the paths, and the association with karma yoga to following your bliss, right? The action, the karma you take for no good reason. In Sanskrit, in the Upanishads, the formula is basically the same, but it's stated a little bit differently, where they say karma yoga is the action you take without regard for the fruit of the action. Right? So action for its own sake, not because it will actually have some effect or move from something from point A to point B. And that's a very fancy, lovely Upanishadic way of saying the thing you do for no good reason, right? Just because you want to for no good reason, right? To act purely and without regard for the fruit of your action, right? So if you're not worried about the fruit, you're acting for no good reason. So it is Hades/Dionysus then that sends up the tsunami of the inner feminine in the form of the Maenads, sends him up to rip him apart, impervious to his music, and bring him back down into the underworld. Is this a punishment, as Plato has said? Absolutely not. Right? This is transformation and coming full circle of the zigzag path of bliss. He, at the end of this transformation, ends up in the underworld with his wife reunited, which is what he wanted in the first place, right? So the classic question, is it punishment or is it transformation? Through our view in the sacred, it's transformation, it's not punishment. It brought him right back down to where he was trying to go to, right? And did he scheme trying to like provoke the Maenads to like rip him apart so he can go down? The myth doesn't say that. If anything, everyone was worried about, was trying to tell a story where the Maenads were like, punishing him. And now when you realize, oh, he's back down where he wanted to be, then you're like, oh, maybe he like tricked the Maenads. So instead of coming up with all these sort of narratives of cunning and fear, threat, and control, you can come up with a sort of insight, not even narrative, but an insight from the sacred, which is he is circumambulating in the underworld and the upper world, and eventually he gets back down where inner masculine, Orpheus, and inner feminine, Eurydice, are finally reunited in the underworld by the transformative action of all this stuff happens. So again, I love this detail of the idea that nothing in any of the realms is immune to his music. Right? Not even the sirens are immune to his music, except the Maenads, and only when they're in a state of high religious ecstasy. So said another way, the only thing that can match delight is enlightenment, which is this religious ecstasy. And even in the Upanishads, when you follow, technically the Bhagavad Gita, when you follow the path of something like karma yoga, or jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga, or raja yoga, these are all different roads to the same place, which is this state of enlightenment, nirvana, where everything falls away. Need and want fall away, but then even desire falls away as well. Because you can't desire something which you already are, right? You can't go to the place you already are, right? And if you're everything, then you're always there. And so it's delightful because here he is following his bliss, karma yoga, if you will, and that eventually, right, circumambulates him into this portal of religious ecstasy through the Maenads and back to his union with the inner feminine. So yeah, I just love that. So you can also say that that the gods of the underworld sent the Maenads like Kali coming, right, in the Hindu system, to consume him and bring him back because of his delight and for no good reason. Right? Why did he have to go down, come up, fail, not be able to get back down, and then be brought by the Maenads, ripped apart, and brought back down again? It's just the pattern it is. Like, why is a flower a certain color or the petals a certain pattern? It's just the way it is. Right? It's just the way it is. And it's a very interesting pattern that he came into the world through the muses and he went out with the Maenads. So you will remember from the beginning that we've said when we talked about dreams that our personal, private, shared vocabulary with our dream self will accrete and accumulate as you read dreams over time. So as you read dreams over time, you may have like, a pair of glasses that starts talking to you, right? In a dream, something, anything. And then you'll read that, you'll spend time with that, you'll have reflection, and you'll be like, okay, I think when glasses talk to me, it means this. And then years can go by, right? But if you have all this in a journal or something, like in Google Docs or Evernote or something like that, even years later, when you have another dream where it's like sunglasses this time, and they're not talking to you, but there's a message on the side of them, something crazy like that, you know what that means. You have a starting point, because the same thing that is sending you these glasses now is the same part of your inner self that sent you those messages before, which you read, and it knows what you think of them now, right? So you accrete this shared vocabulary. And the beauty of accreting and developing the shared vocabulary when you do dream reading is that the quality of the messaging that comes through to you, the guidance, the protection, the insight, can be much more sophisticated because you have a broader vocabulary, right? And so for us, our mythic reading in sacred space over the past year has also in its own way accreted this kind of group collective of all of us in the sacred space community, shared vocabulary with our counterpart on the other side, whatever dream muse is guiding, right, the golden thread of Gary and myself in picking these stories, and all of you guiding you to actually come back week after week, even though you have busy lives and you have all this other stuff you could be doing, right? And so here in live sacred space, we are in dialogue with the mythopoetic side. We've been reading myths one after the other. And one bit of our shared vocabulary is that we have associated music with delight several times before. So here we take it as delight in this myth too. And here then is the god of delight himself, Orpheus. Right? And so whatever his arc is, it's got to be a clue as to what the pattern and path of delight itself looks like. What is this pattern then? The way I express it is, you follow the golden thread of your delight and bliss, and you zigzag your whole life. You do things non-linearly for no good reason. You lose vision, you lose your Eurydice. You go through heaven and hell to get her back. You get a chance, hope against hope. You mess it up and lose your vision again. And then finally it comes back in a manifold form, like in hurricane form in the Maenads, rips you apart and takes you back down again. And meanwhile, everyone on the sideline watching is like, oh my gosh, this guy's like going through this roller coaster of life. And all you know is that you've been following your bliss the whole time. Right? When you look at it through the profane view, it's like, oh my gosh, why wasn't I just a plumber? Or a surgeon? My life would have been like so much easier, right? But then from the sacred side, it's like, I wouldn't have traded it for anything. This is my life. This is the path of my life. If this is how I blossom, and I'm a dandelion that like the lawnmower comes and tries to cut every week, then so be it. I'm not going to not be a dandelion. This is who I am. This is what I am. Even if I get to blossom for 30 minutes before I get cut down, so be it. Right? I get to do what so many other flowers have never been able to do, because they didn't have the opportunity I had, right? Or they had it and they were chicken shit, right? This is my time, and I will blossom as I will, come what may. Come what may. Okay. So there are obviously similar messages that we've had in other stories, but this Orpheus pattern really brings it home to me. If you choose to follow your bliss, and even assuming, especially assuming, you follow it consistently, successfully, competently, then congratulations, your path in life will be very zigzaggy. Right? In other words, that's for sure, Because if it happened with Orpheus, it's going to happen with us. And B, it's not punishment. It's not incompetence. It's not failure. That is the pattern. That is the pattern. And you can say no. You can say no. But if you follow your bliss, the pattern will be zigzag. It will zigzag very low at times, and it will zigzag very high at times. And that is the pattern. Now, that is not even a threat or warning, right? Because we're in sacred space. So it's like, oh, are you threatening me? Are you saying I shouldn't do it? I should look out? And the reason it's not a threat or warning is that if you really are following your delight, you won't even listen to any warning, right? You will be playing your music. You will be impervious to all of my warnings, going like, don't marry her. It's a bad choice. It's you're just going to go anyway. And follow this inner feminine of your inner vision, even as it leads you into the underworld and back again, right? I mean, even live sacred space itself. Why do we do live sacred space? We do it for no good reason, right? We were lured into doing live sacred space because of the pandemic. We're like, shoot, we need to do something. I'm not a physician. I can't like contribute in that way. I had to find some way to contribute. But now it's been over a year, right? The pandemic, God willing, fingers crossed, is almost over. This one, at least, right? So why do we continue doing live sacred space? And the answer for me is I have no idea. Right? I have no idea why I'm still doing these, other than it's delightful. It's just in the nature and the flow of what it is I do. And apparently, luckily for all of us, it's in the flow of what Gary does as well, enabling us to have all these sessions. Speaking of whom, Gary, do you have any other thoughts you would like to share?
Hi, Artie. Thank you. Yeah, I was reminded of, the talk you had given earlier, circumambulation, labyrinthine path of bliss. I think you've done a whole extended talk on it. And this comes up in Bliss many times when we have this discussion of how bliss works. And, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, and 1 step back. And initially, it's kind of, you're flummoxed and you kind of wonder why this happens. Then you start to accept, okay, so this is the labyrinth, this is how we go. So it's okay. It's, 2 steps forward is fine, 1 step back is also okay, because it's all a very labyrinthine path. That's all right. Then comes the story of Orpheus, and you mention how he is the son of a muse, and this, his music is his path of bliss. And this is the pattern and the archetype that the story shows, that the path is exact. The labyrinthine path that he takes. This has got to be symbolically the path of bliss itself. And it kind of takes it to a whole new level. The message goes to a whole new level. That is not just okay to go 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Keep talking.
How to do it, right? That is exactly how you follow the path of bliss, because the path of bliss itself goes in a zigzag way, forward and back and forward and back. So when you're in the path, at that moment you think that you're moving back, but you're actually always in the path of bliss. You've never strayed. It's not a setback. Right? You've not gone astray. You're still on the path. So that, I think, is a kind of a powerful message to take back.
Yeah, it really makes...
Yeah.
It really makes me think of this phrase from, I guess it is the medieval Christian tradition, right? Where, so Mother Mary, right, the mother of Christ, when she was visited by the angel Gabriel and was told that she was the chosen one, right, to give birth to, the Savior of the world, right? her response in some traditions, because presumably it was a choice that was given to her, right? Because she could say no. And her response in Latin was fiat mihi, fiat mihi. Let it be done to me. Let it be done to me. And this phrase fiat mihi is this kind of idea, the feeling behind it is, whatever it is, whatever the pattern is that you would like me to take on, I accept it. Right? My answer is yes. The sense of surrender. Right? It's not the sort of exchange, cunning, fear, threat, and control negotiation of like, well, how about just the good parts and let me sort of, lower the price of the bad parts. And instead, it's just like, what is the request? What is the thing that's being offered? And the answer is, yes, fiat mihi. And that's often paired with another phrase in the similar tradition, which is Amor, fati, right? Which is love of fate, love of one's fate, where it's basically like, whatever it is, I accept it, and even this next level of I love it. Right? Because you think about the path of Mary just for a second, it's like it's not an easy path, right? Right, she gives birth. It's this immaculate conception, and it's like, so in the profane world, it's like, okay, Joseph and his parents are like, okay, I guess we're rolling with this, right? You have to think about this from the lens of the profane and what this young girl kind of went through, and her son, kind of the Christ, the early stories, the sort of unofficial stories of him when he was like a child and a teenager. It's tough raising a teen who has all these miraculous powers and thinks he's literally God's gift to the world. And you got to be his mother, right? You still got to like feed him and make sure he like is respectful of the girls when he goes to the school dance and everything. And then of course you lose him, right? He dies before you do. You have to bury your son, right? So, and this is all sort of mystical. It's sort of symbolic. It's mythopoetic. But this sense of this visionary inner feminine saying, yes, I recognize this is the pattern and I accept it. And when you have this approach to life, this is the posture of unconditional love for life, right? The joys and the pleasures of life, and also the horrors of life. And you accept them and even love them all without condition, right? That's unconditional love. That's unconditional love. And as we say in healing, right, now, this is not why you do it, right? But this is more of a byproduct. Just like Orpheus doesn't play to charm rocks and trees, it's just a byproduct. Yeah. But as we say in the 7th day of the 7-day healing program, the outer world is a reflection of the state of affairs within you. Right? It doesn't mean it's your fault, right? Just like you may have a gene that you inherited through no fault of your own that predisposes you to a certain illness. So your predisposition to the illness comes from you. It's from within you, but it's not your fault. Right? So in just the same way, your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So your outer situation is coming from within you. It's not necessarily your fault. It could be like inherited emotional wounds, things you went through in childhood, but it makes you a certain way, and then your outer world reflects that. And so when you get to a point where you have the posture of like, I accept life without condition. I love the world without condition. The world does not have to be a good world, a just world for me to love it. I love it as it is, right? If that what comes from within you, then the outer world will also tend to reflect that, for better or worse. For better or worse. So what you were saying, what I ran off to grab was I wanted to grab this. I've used this before, the symbol of the labyrinth, right? and this is an acrylic etch of the Chart style labyrinth, right? It's a 13 circuit labyrinth. And basically, I just wanted to bring this out because when we talk about circumambulation, right? I agree with what you said, that this story takes circumambulation to yet another level, right? Because you could be forgiven if you thought that, oh, circumambulation means like, it's okay if you have a winding, zigzagging path through life. You know, not everybody succeeds. Not everybody does the straight and narrow. And if you are a late bloomer or you have ups and downs, that's okay. That's okay. We love you anyway, right? And that's not what it is at all. You could be forgiven if that's how you thought about it. But with the Orpheus pattern, we realize that this is an entirely other level. It's not that this might happen, and if it does happen, that's okay, right? We'll still give you a pass. It's rather that this is the path. This is the path.
Yeah.
Right? And you can say, well, we're winding, we're like taking all these hairpin turns. We keep thinking, oh, we're going great. Oh, we failed again. Oh, we're going great. Oh, we failed again, right? And the whole time you think, well, at least I'm getting closer. But as you trace through, you get closer, you get farther, you get closer, you get farther, until you come around, you take a hard left, hard right turn, and then you're in the center. And then you turn around and come back out after your transformation. Right? Jonah goes into the belly of the beast and comes back out. But the next level is to say, this is not what might happen. This is what will happen. Guaranteed. Fiat mihi, Amor, fati, if you can. Right? Why is it so winding? For no good reason. It just is. Right? Why does it take so long? I could just go straight in. Why does it take so long? Right? I think it's like 37 turns, right? I don't know. Why is the flower yellow versus red? I don't know. It just is. If you follow, and this is not like following the path of fear and sniveling and prestige. No, if you follow the highest path of your delight and actually follow your bliss, I think everyone's like panting after, oh, I want to follow my bliss. I want to find my life's true meaning and purpose. If you hit it, bullseye, win the brass ring, this is what the path will look like. It just is what it is. It just is what it is. Yeah, what say?
It's like looking at the cross section of a stem or a leaf under the microscope, and then you realize there's a pattern to how the cells are placed and how the tissue is placed, and then it just is. It's almost like a mark of identity of that particular living creature. How those things are placed in what pattern they're placed, but you're looking at the pattern. You're not really asking why it is this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It just is, right? So when we look at this labyrinthine path, it's we don't know why, but it's just that way. That is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me of another point you mentioned. That I think this was the talk of honoring the dead, where you were talking about the golden thread. I think this was one of the first sessions. Let me look that up. You mentioned how the golden thread of our bliss just is. And it's it does not change and it does not die. Right. Even after we die, even if after we move on, the golden thread doesn't die. So it still stays the same. And I kind of, when you follow that in this story, you see that Orpheus is in the living realm or in the realm of the dead the first time or the second time. Whether he's singing with joy or singing with grief, whatever happens in his life, the one constant thing that doesn't change is the golden thread of his music.
Mm.
Right? That doesn't change it, and that stays. Not only does it not change, but it's constantly there all the time.
Mm.
You can see that, right? So
Mm.
that's something that I was reminded of, that is a constant.
Mm.
And particularly because we were reminded of the world of the dead in this story.
Mm.
So yeah, again, a very, very powerful reminder, I think. So what I wanted to ask you, since we were on that topic, is probably when we do Demeter and Persephone, we're going to kind of touch on the realm of the dead again, which will be a very powerful motif in that story.
Yeah.
But since we're there, how do you read mythopoetically the realm of the living and realm of the dead when it comes to inner transformation within ourselves?
I mean, the realm of the dead is, at the simplest mythopoetic level, the realm of the dead is the realm of, the caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. It's the cocoon.
Right.
It's the cocoon. Yeah. In all these fairy stories, when you go down and you don't wash yourself and you sit and you let your hair grow and your nails grow, and the classic one from the Devil's Sooty Brother of Grimm's fairy tales is, you do not wipe the water from your eyes. So when you cry and grieve, you do not wipe it away. You do not suppress it. You do not hide it. You do not keep up with it, wiping it away. You let it flow. And it does whatever it does to your clothes, your mascara, whatever. Right? And so at the simplest level, when you go through transformation and you die, right, you go down into the world of the underworld. And then at some point you may come back up, right? Come back in a different form, or come back as Odysseus did. He went down into the underworld and back. Orpheus went down into the underworld and back. And Asclepius went down into the underworld and back and directly up into the constellations. So there is this sense of, you fear it and you don't fear it at the same time. When Circe in the Odyssey, when Circe told Odysseus that he would have to go into the underworld, he just started crying. He started sobbing. He didn't even tell his men. He was like, okay, let's just go. And then when they were right at the mouth, they were like, boss, what are we doing here? And he told them, and they all started crying. Right. But of course, we know from they went in, they did their thing, they got their message from Tiresias, and then were able to come back out. So even after that, they still fear death, right? They still fought, right, to stay alive. They still fought to make it home. So it's this curious thing that, like, even when you've been down to the underworld and back, you still fear it.
Yeah.
Right? And that is exactly like transformation in real life, which is, you've been through a bad time, you've had pain, there's something that happened to you that you grieve, and that at some level you'll grieve for the rest of your life, on and off. It will just hit you when you're unawares, right? And after a certain point, you're okay with that. You're like, if I grieve out of nowhere, I start crying, that's fine, right? This friend, this thing that I lost, whatever I lost, is worthy of that. Right, it's worthy of having a hold on me for the rest of my life, right? Because grief obviously is a form of praise.
Right.
Is a form of praise, right? You only grieve the things that were good, that you wish you had back. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny because even after you've gone through grief, you've come out the other side, you come out stronger, you come out, more vibrant, more wise, more brilliant. Even despite all of that, your fear of grief does not abate. The next time you feel yourself getting pulled into grief, you're like grabbing onto the tree, nails scratching, all the same. All the same. You never lose your fear of the underworld, which is what makes it so archetypal. It's its characteristics don't change with the passing of chronological temporal time, because the archetypes are timeless. They're in the realm of the eternal, where time is not even time itself is an archetype. It doesn't. It's not a meta thing that applies to the world of the eternal.
Right.
Now, in the different traditions, there are different systems of like, what is the land of the shadows versus the land of the ancestors, and that's, that gets very diverse very quickly across world traditions. But I think the realm of grief and cooking and transformation is the basic motif that is pretty much always there.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think, yeah, when we come to Persephone, there will be a lot more to talk about that, but that's a persistent
Okay.
as well, when we become brief. So would you want to reveal the exercise for today?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So for our exercise this week, we have a very, very special treat for you. And the exercise is that we have a member of our live sacred space community. Her name is Clara, and she is in Switzerland. And I was chatting with her several weeks ago, and I mentioned that we were thinking about doing a session on Orpheus. And she said, well, I have a connection to Orpheus. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. And she kind of rolled her eyes and she was like, yeah, I'm a professional musician. She's a world-class classical guitarist. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I floated the idea, well, if you would like to, please don't be offended, but if you would like to play something during live sacred space, we would love to have you. So everyone was excited and she agreed. And I want to bring her on in just a moment to play. But before I do, I would like to just give a little bit of framing and context for what this is and why we're doing it. So I love having the idea of having music in our live sacred space sessions. We've never done it before. This will be the first time. But to me, music is a form of embodiment. That thankfully can travel across the ether, right, online. And when you hear the music, it still moves you, okay? In the last couple sessions, I've been giving honor to my patron gods, Chiron and Asclepius. For our friend Clara, this is a form of, that she has authorized me to share with you. What she will do here in our presence is a form of offering from her to her own patron, Orpheus, her own patron god, Orpheus. So the thing that's a little bit different from when you have maybe heard musical performances in the past, this is not a performance for us. When Clara plays in just a moment here, she is a professional world-class guitarist, but she's on 4G from her studio in Switzerland. There's no special, we didn't send a camera crew out there or anything. It's just her laptop camera. And that's all okay, because if the sound is not great, if there's a bus in the background, if the Wi-Fi is choppy, all of that is perfectly okay, because this is not a performance for us, okay? It is rather that as her community in sacred space today, our role, again, only if you want, but our role is to hold space as her community for her, as she gives her offering, not to us, but to Orpheus. Right? So all we have to do in supporting her and enabling her is what we already do now, which is to hold space for her. And as a byproduct, we get to be blessed with the opportunity to also, like a glass on the wall, get to hear her performance as well. And so the exercise then is for all of us, again, no expectation of participation, only if you want. Feel free to come and go as you please. But our exercise then, our embodiment exercise, is I will suggest, invite you to join me in holding space for a member of our community to give her offering to her patron Orpheus in the context of our sacred space. And I've asked Clara if her screen cuts out or Wi-Fi or whatever, I've asked her to feel free to do whatever she would like to do. She can stop playing and fiddle with the controls. She can be like, oh, it cut out, but I'm just going to keep playing anyway, and continue her offering, even as we're holding space for her, from a distance, and the video happens to be off. Okay. So with that preamble, I will invite Clara to come on screen. Okay, we can hear you, but the video. Here we are.
Hi.
Hi, Clara. Hi. Thank you
Hi,
so much
Artie.
for joining us.
Hi, everyone. So happy.
Thank you. Thank you. Still okay to go?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So thank you for being here with us. Please begin wherever you would like to begin. Play whatever you would like for as long as you would like. And thank you for allowing us to be with you as you give your offering. So thank you. And now I will withdraw.
Thank you, Artie. That was it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. And thank you for the blessing of your music. Is there anything you would like to say, or should I? I'm just kind of speechless.
I think I'm good.
Okay. Thank you so much, Clara.
Thank
See you
you.
soon. Thank you. Whew, okay. Thank you for all of us together holding that beautiful space for Clara. To express her music. So thank you all as well for participating. Okay, so that was the exercise, and I'll go ahead and close the session, close sacred space. So our next session is Sunday. It's free, open to the public. Feel free to invite others, only if you want. I'll put the link here and put it in Facebook as well. Sorry, it's hard to continue talking after I just want to continue floating. But I guess I'm the MC, so I need to keep going. I'm just feeling full of. I don't even have the words. That was amazing, and I'm just feeling filled with love and inspiration and spirit. I don't even have the words, but thanks to Clara and thanks to everyone for being open to doing this together here today. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do our closing and say that I hereby close delightfully and filled with gratitude and joy. I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you, all of you, for holding this space with us. And thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, the spiritual nourishment, the muse and the musical and the brilliant genius nourishment of the shared sacred space with us. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and free of the undue control of others. Have a great day, have a great week, and I will see you all in the next session. Thank you. Thank you.